Aloha y'all, and welcome back to my channel. And welcome to the second or next installment of my more in-depth series of discussing the harsher reality of what it is like living with a shopping addiction. Now, when I have done my first bit. If you have not seen that, I will leave it down below. And that is just sort of an introduction of what it's like with the psyche of an everyday just dealing with it, because I have a shopping addiction. Not in a shopping addiction, I love to buy shoes and makeup. No, as in we have dealt with financial issues because of said shopping addiction. I enjoy buying stuff that I don't need. And so in that first video, it was just sort of a overview, sort of just an introduction to what it's like. Because in that video, I discussed that when it comes to, there are certain addictions that get attention that are very serious, and then when you just put like shopping with it, it's just kind of like, a little bit glib, a little bit, oh, well, they have a shopping addiction. It isn't approached with the same level of, I hesitate to say respect, but the same level of urgency or a need to see it as something that is viable and that can be life destroying. And so today we're going to be going on and going a little bit more in depth. And today we're going to be discussing, obviously I can only speak on my own experience. I am not using this as an overarching, everyone who has this problem, this is how it is for them. I'm speaking from my own experience, what I've dealt with, what, research has whatever revealed to me. I'm not a therapist. I don't have a degree. This is just me giving y'all my thoughts and opinions on this subject, with my experience in mind, helping me to be able to sort of relate to these points and give you real examples in and of myself that you can look and have and be tangible examples. I do have some notes. I'm not sure how this one is going to go. The first one was kind of stream of thought. I had points that I wanted to hit, and this is kind of a little bit the same. But in this video, we are going to go over elements that I have found in the dark side of shopping, as well as something that couples in with it, which is addict enabling consumerism, which is a very important part of this, because when it comes to addiction, it's very easy to say, well, it's your problem. It's your fault. And yes, there is that, whenever it's come to the point where I've purchased too much or I've done whatever or I've drawn out too much money or anything, it's my fault. I'm the one doing it. No one put a whatever to my head and said, do it. But nowadays we live in such a consumeristic state. We live in the level of consumerism that is perpetuating the need, the desire to be purchasing new stuff all the time. There is so much rotation with marketing and ads. And obviously, I'm not just talking about the situation that has to do with makeup. For me and my whatevers that I've been through, that is just one of the outlets, one of the facets of what makes me have a shopping addiction. And so living in such a consumer-based society really does create that scenario where, overspending, overindulging, overpurchasing, having more than we need, living beyond our means, it's at this point become normal. I used to, I'll watch videos talking about, like other people's experiences and them being like, well, I'm in this much debt and I'm in this much debt. And there was a period of my life where I was like, well, I'm fine, having whatever amount of debt. That's just normal. That's natural. That you have to have that in order to live. And while I do understand that there are certain things that, you kind of do have to have debt for, your housing, stuff like that, schooling, there are things that typically you have to do that require going into a certain amount of debt. But you don't need to go into debt to buy makeup, shoes, and clothes, and a myriad of other non-essentials. But that is sort of how we're told, how we're shown, how we learn. Shopping is a leisure activity. And that's when it becomes, back whenever, I don't even know. Like I said, I don't have a degree. I'm just going from my own personal assessment, my own personal assumptions. But, typically, you think, like shopping, you're going out and you're, getting what you need. Whereas now, shopping, like I said, it's an activity. It's a thing to do. You just go out and you go to the shops and you do your thing and you get all the unnecessary things because it's an activity, kind of the same way. It's a hobby. And I most definitely fall under, I was talking to my husband because part of my problem is for me, I enjoy the act of shopping, whether it's online or in person. I just enjoy the feeling of going out and finding the thing or, finding the thing that you didn't need or you weren't going out for and being like, oh, that's so great. That's fantastic. That's wonderful. I need that. Whereas he, even if he had, even more disposable income, he doesn't actually enjoy the act of going out and spending money the way that I do. So kind of going into the darker side of shopping, because I feel like I've said this before, I'll say it 100 times. When it comes to shopping or shopping as related to having that shopping addiction, it does get a little bit, we have funny movies made about it. We have, songs and whatever. It's just kind of like this, thing that's just kind of like, when in reality, it is a very serious thing. And so, obviously, we're in that consumer-based society thing going on. And, you have your money and you have that. What happens if you don't have the money? Well, we go down the ever so wonderful rabbit hole of credit cards. And not even the ever so random hole of whatever credit cards. We go under the worst type of credit card to ever exist, which is the store credit cards. Why these are so damaging is because, number one, they are very easy to get. You don't have to have a phenomenal credit card score in order to be able to be approved for a store credit card. The second thing that makes them absolutely awful is they are credit cards that are directly linked toward what you like to spend. We'll be a little bit real here with y'all. I don't want to put too much of my whatevers on the internet, but think about it. Sephora credit card, JCPenney card, which has Sephora inside it, Hot Topic, Ulta. There are basically, if it's a main store, they have a credit card. And so you're there and you're like, well, I don't have the money or whatever. I will just apply for the credit card and you'll be able to get that momentary satisfaction of having that stuff. And the way it is with any kind of credit card, you're like, well, I'll pay it off later. But that goes right on into these store credit cards notoriously have awful interest rates, which is the amount of money you have to pay extra in order to pay off the debt you have on the card. Like, I didn't understand what a bad interest rate was until my dad was like, let me look down and let me show you what it says here in this cute little fine print where, yeah, you have this credit card, whatever, but you gotta pay back 27% more than what you spend. So in the end, it seems like a nice little, quick, easy, whatever thing to do. When in reality, you're out even more money than you were if you hadn't gotten the card. So yes, you have that momentary satisfaction of being able to satiate that need to purchase something, but then it just gets even worse. It creates even more of a problem because, like I said, you're spending even more money in order to pay off that card so you can keep buying things. It's just this really awful black hole of just this, spending and then paying off and then spending more. And for this, I am speaking from personal experience. I can't tell you how many times, I go out somewhere and be like, okay, all right, well, let's apply for, this one, whatever, you're sitting there, you're standing there, and they're all like, and another thing that is problematic, that kind of helps into whatever. Having credit cards and having multiple credit cards is another thing that is seen as being very normal in today's society. And not only that, it's kind of like every store has a credit card, and then you go and you're purchasing. How many times have y'all been in line and you're going to check out and they're like, hey, would you like to apply for our credit card? And you're like, no, I'm good. I'm really good. And then they're like, yeah, but you're going to get 20% off. And then if you have this credit card, it's going to save you 2.5% on every purchase that you have before. You don't need no credit check. And you're like, I mean, basically, I didn't even have to be told twice. I was like, all right, sign me up for that thing. Can I use it today? And 9 times out of 10, if you apply for that credit card, which you are most likely to get approved for, you can use it that day, which is just a disaster waiting for happen, a disaster I have lived through, and a disaster that I am trying to contain and teach myself better coping mechanisms than let's go out and buy something. Something that is very important to remember when it comes to this sort of thing. You're out there and you're doing your shopping and you're doing your thing. One thing that can occur that I have experienced is when you are so focused, when you have a shopping addiction, and when acquiring things and purchasing things and going out and spending money becomes your favorite pastime, your most regular activity, when the majority of your life is circled around needing to spend money, you can face a lot of isolation. You can face, loss of friends. Financial duress is one of the leading main causes and contributors to divorce. And this is due in part to when you have a shopping addiction, it's the type of thing where debt is... It's inevitable. I don't want to say it's guaranteed to happen if you have a shopping addiction, but it is something that is very prevalent within that sort of problem. It is something that I have experienced. It is something that I am working through today. I do want to put out there, y'all don't need to worry. We're getting it taken care of. Excuse me, burp squad. But it is something that I am still working through today. It is learning new coping mechanisms. It is learning a new way of thinking, and it is figuring out why you have this addiction. Because like most addiction, you do have a certain predisposition. For example, I have an addictive personality. Anything I've ever been in, I kind of go big or go home. I used to be a part of I'm not even sure what percentage, but I used to be a binge drinker. I wouldn't say I was an alcoholic, but at the same time, I wasn't not an alcoholic. I now absolutely abstain from any sort of alcoholic beverage because, with that addictive personality, you go full on in, which is the problem that I'm still working through and dealing with this shopping addiction. But with having this addiction and with having the, spending money, spending out of your, when you spend more money than you make, that creates a myriad of problems. And obviously I can't speak for everyone. Like I'm saying, I can't speak with everyone that has this. From my own experience, from, what I've seen, what I've read, the type of thing is you're spending out of your income. So you're like, okay, we supplement with credit cards. You keep getting more credit cards. You can't make those payments. So you get a credit card to help pay off the other credit card, which is one of the worst things you can do when you're literally using your myriad of credit cards to pay for the other credit cards. That is a big problem. And a very problematic part of shopping, a very problematic part of how society kind of views shopping, I sort of touched on this in the beginning, is the idea of social spending. There isn't really a lot of pullback from spending. If you think about commercials, if you think about magazines, if you think about emails, if you think about all these different things that culminate into the facilitation of needing to spend money. It's always constantly go, 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 go. There's a new something and there's always a new something. Y'all know this is the problem that I have with a large amount of within the beauty community and marketing there. But it is not exclusive to just the beauty community because I like other things that aren't just that. Obviously, if you think about clothes, You think about the concept of fast fashion. You buy something and you're like, this is so great, this is wonderful. And then you get that email that says, oh, BTW, we just got 10,000 new more items in. You should buy this. You're like, wow, okay. And then you buy that thing and you're like, this is all cute. And then they're like, well, we're going to release another collection. But it just creates this never ending cycle that, quite honestly, the stores and the places and the whatever in the marketing, they know exactly what they're doing. You know, there's no kind of like, oh, well, maybe. No, they know what they're doing. They know for a fact that they facilitate the addict enabling consumerism, because in today's society, they would rather see someone addicted to spending money than someone who is conscious about their finances and making better choices, because that doesn't benefit them. They would rather have a bunch of mindless shopping addicts than people who are actually taking stock of their situation and purchasing in accordance to their financial situation. Okay, another sort of, underlying problem when it comes to having a shopping addiction, when it comes to, the darker and the, side of shopping is, we sort of start off, we're like, okay, you have the addiction, you spend too much money, then you use the credit cards to supplement that, and then we get into lying and hiding purchases. I will admit, I will raise my hand, this is something that I have done before. It's the kind of thing where someone asks you, oh, is that new? And you're like, no, I've totally had this like all my life since I was born, since I was a baby. When in reality, you were using a credit card that's nearly maxed out in order to purchase that thing last week. And this goes into, the unhealthy the unhealthy psychology of having to lie in order to maintain this need to have and this need to possess, which is essentially putting that addiction, which when you have an addiction, one of the hallmarks of it is you put that addiction above everything else, your own welfare, your loved ones, it becomes the most satisfying whatever need you have that is caused by that addiction is more important than anything else in your life. And being a self-aware addict is, I cannot tell you, because you're sitting there and you're aware of the unhealthiness, it's wrong, you've got issues, and you do it anyway for whatever reason. But when you get into hiding things, and when you get into literally, in your mind needing to lie, because if you don't lie about it, that means you have to address it. That means you have to admit that there is a problem. And admitting that there's a problem means that you're gonna have to, admitting that it's there and, facing it, attacking it, no. Confronting it means that you have to admit that it's wrong, that you have to admit that it's behavior that needs to stop. But part of the problem is in that dynamic is deep down, or maybe not so deep down, you don't want to stop. Because for one reason or another, or whatever reason, you get a certain, you get something from this behavior. In a lot of documentaries I have, watched and things that I have read, the act of purchasing something and the act of like opening something and getting something is such a dopamine rush that it's very similar to what it's like, the kind of rush someone gets when they use drugs. And so you have that nurturing and that fostering, that sensation that you get, that high you get from purchasing. And so you're out and you're about and you're socializing. And so you're associating socializing with shopping, which then creates that dynamic. So you're out and you're great and you're doing your thing and you're riding high. And then when you get to the lying and needing to hide purchases and stuff like that, you hit that low. And what you do then is you have to go out and you have to get that again. You're like, I feel horrible. I feel like crap. And so your brain says, remember that thing we did yesterday that made us feel so good? Let's do that again. Rather than rationally thinking and being like, well, let's do this instead of that. It's like, no, you got to get the fix. You got to get the feel. You got to get the, and so all of the naturalizing, the normalizing of the amount of shopping that people do just adds on in and builds on top of the initial addiction, which is why I call it addict enabling consumerism, because it is. It's like society is all like, okay, you have an addiction. All right, well, we're going to bombard you with nothing but marketing about how much you need to buy things. I mean, if you think about how absurd marketing is, smoking. We know factually that smoking causes cancer and a myriad of other problems. Well, there are how many cigarette ads? I mean, this is something that kills people and we're still allowed to advertise about it and sell it. I mean, if that's not twisted, I don't know what else is. And it's the same sort of thing where it's like, it's okay. It's fine. Go out and shop. It's great. It's natural. It's normal. It's part of the American dream. Next, I want to talk about some of the more things. This is also kind of going under addict enabling consumerism, a little bit in the dark side of shopping. One thing that I know a lot of y'all suffer from, I can't tell you how many Snapchats I've had or whatever, and I've been like, this specific thing will be the death of me. You know, and then I send back and I'm like, ha ha ha, me too. And that's sort of like kind of, you know, I'm not saying any of y'all have an addiction or whatever, I'm just talking about my whatever. But, you know, we kind of face it with that sort of glib, that humor, you know, kind of laughing about it makes it a little bit less dark. But one thing that I have dealt with and am dealing with, and something that is very, oh my goodness, this is probably one of the worst things, kind of falls under how destructive credit cards can be, is I know there are a myriad of whatever ones, but I think one of the main ones is Afterpay. There's also Klarna, there's Sezzle. You know, what these are is you go on and you make a purchase, but if you do it through, you know, Afterpay or any of those others, they split it up into be 4 payments. Now, Beautylish does this, but Beautylish does this in a better way. Whereas they split your payment up and they make it monthly. And you cannot have another split payment if you haven't paid off that other one, which is a much better way of doing it. Whereas with, say, Afterpay, which is the one that I deal with, the more you pay it off, the more allowance they give you. Because, you know, you start off and you make your first whatever and you're allowed to have however much money or whatever. And then when you pay it off, they're like, okay, all right, they paid it off. Let's give them a bigger bubble. The ability to have more Afterpay purchases. And Afterpay, and I think Sezzle and Klarna too, it's every 2 weeks. And unlike credit cards, you cannot make minimum payments. It's like, all right, we split it up 4 and you better have the money to pay for this in 2 weeks, which can be good in the sense of, okay, all right, I only have this much money now, but in 2 weeks I get paid. So I understand part of that. But at least for me, part of what makes these things so dangerous is because, you know, say you have like I don't know, you know, because they split it up into 4, you know, you can kind of do some math and say, you know, I had like, you know, a $300 whatever. Well, it's only like $75 when you purchase it. So you internally think, that's not so bad. When in reality, you aren't internalizing the whole number that you just spent. You're focusing on that $75 that got pulled out of your bank that day rather than the $300 that you're gonna have to, you know, pay for in the next however many weeks. So there's sort of a disassociation between how much you're spending and, you know, at least that's something that I've experienced. I don't know about other people, but for me and my future, the next video I'm going to be doing is going to be talking about shopping addiction, how I'm coping, what I do to deal with this, and what I'm doing to try to break these habits and fix my broken thinking. 'Cause I'm gonna have to be like, I just can't do Afterpay or Klarna or Sezzle, because it is once again one of those black holes that you just fall down in, and then it can get real dangerous very quick, and then you're left with all this and you can't pull yourself up out of that hole. Another aspect of YouTube and being a YouTuber and being the kind of YouTuber that I am, that causes a little bit of problem with the whole being like, oh, well, I do it because I'm a YouTuber so I can spend money. Like I've said before to y'all, I can't tell you how many things I've justified buying, whether I ended up using them or not, because it's like, oh, well, I'm a YouTuber and I need it. But I don't know about y'all, but with me starting watching it on YouTube, one of the main things I watched were shopping hauls. Makeup hauls, Sephora hauls, clothing hauls. Whenever the Sephora 20% off sale, whatever comes, you're looking that up and you're watching everyone's recommendations and seeing what they're getting, And so you have that internalized watching other people buy things, which is... it's a gift and a curse, because then you're like, oh, do I want that? Or, oh, I don't want to get that. In the case of me, one thing that happens that is problematic is I see other people purchasing things, and that kind of procs my need, my desire to go purchase things, because when you see other people do it, it almost creates that social thing again, where you're just like, okay, well, they're going out and they're buying that. I want to buy that. I want to like it. They like it. They think it's amazing. And so it once again opens up this whole thing of going on down and buying. And then the other aspect of it from being a YouTuber, haul videos. I have since been trying, y'all know my low buy and whatever, and that's part of, my low buy is part of me trying to control and figure out and whatever this shopping addiction, because I was funneling a lot of makeup, a lot of time, a lot of money into makeup, a lot of time and energy and all that. And one thing that I've noticed is I have kind of funneled it into other stuff. But I have been doing good on the low buy, so at least there is that. But, for a while I was like, okay, if I'm going to be a viable YouTuber, I need to have haul videos. I need to do, the makeup hauls, the Sephora, and they have to be huge. I need to be dropping at least $300 on these hauls, or else I'm not going to be seen as a serious YouTuber. And the funny thing is, a lot of my haul videos are actually things that get lower views than other videos, partly because I think some of the beauty community, or at least the demographic of my viewers, we're pulling away from the incessant consumerism. We're starting to realize that we're buying too much, we're buying the wrong things, and the makeup companies are just shilling out makeup left and right that we don't need. But then you have the concept of being, a fashion YouTuber. So you have to do clothing fashion. It kind of goes into that turnover thing where you're like, okay, you buy the one collection and then 2 weeks later another collection drops. You're like, okay, well, I need to get that one, and you just go on into this, once again, this excessive amount of rotation where you're buying more than you need, buying more than you're going to use. And while I have been lucky enough to get some of the stuff some of the clothes and some of the stuff that I've reviewed, I've been given that free of charge from said companies. But I am not at the level of YouTube fame where I'm getting everything for free left and right. So I am definitely sort of filling out those gaps with my own money, which a lot of times, you're living above and out of your means. And part of the frustrating part for me as someone who has this addiction is, I kind of touched in it when, being self-aware. I know that this is wrong. I know that this is defaulted, thinking, faulty thought process. And when you're able to rationalize, I can rationalize in my mind. I'm working on making it rational into actions. But when you are aware of, your fractured thinking and your fractured actions, it makes it so much more frustrating. I just recently talked to my mom about this, where I'm like, when I'm buying things, inside, everything once in a while, but I don't want to be excessively bringing I don't have room. I don't have the space. I don't have the whatever, And so deep down, I know that, I really don't want to be bringing these things in, but I am overpowered. I am consumed with that dopamine, with that kick, with that high in that moment, with the thought that, for me personally at least, with the thought of today, this order, this item, this thing will finally give me fulfillment. When I make this order, when I do this purchase, this will be the one that means I won't have to buy anything ever again. But that is not the case. And I continue to go out and continue to attempt to fill myself with stuff. Whether I'm trying to relive that high of purchasing something and trying to get dopamine that way, or, whether I have suffered with low self-esteem for an extended period of my life, whether I'm trying to fulfill myself and fill that lack of self-esteem and love with items, that's something that I'm struggling with. So being the self-aware and I would like, when it comes to, finance, I would like to have the ability to occasionally buy something, to occasionally be out and be like, that's a really freaking cute top. I would love to have that one top and have the money for it and not go in and be like, I like that top and that dress and those shoes and that whatever, and literally feeling the need to get all of it, rather than being able to say, I would like that one thing this one time that I am able to afford. That is what I would like to do deep down inside, when in reality, I'm running around like a chicken with my head cut off, all kinds of just like I said, deep down, I know I am fully aware of the wrongness of my actions, and that makes it so much more frustrating, because you're going around and you're like the social spending and the credit, and all this jazz, and you're just surrounded by this swirling whatever of chaos. And what you do to help yourself feel better about the chaos is you go out and buy something, which then just creates even more chaos for someone, at least in my experience, who has an addiction and who is dealing with the shopping addiction. It is something that overrides all the rationale, all the critical thinking that you have in your brain, and you hyper focus on that moment, on that need, on that dopamine, on that fix of purchasing that thing. And so I feel like when it comes to the dissection and the onlook and the whole thing about, shopping, we really need to be taking a deeper look, a more critical look at what this consumeristic society is actually contributing to. In all honesty, this society is contributing to addiction, and honestly every aspect of it, not just buying. It's contributing to an addiction in smoking, in drinking, in every level of unhealthy, excessive behavior. And oftentimes it gets laughed off. It doesn't get discussed. It doesn't get addressed because it makes the economy money. And in the end, it's really sad and it's really water, but in the end, this society, like I said before, it would rather have a bunch of mindless addicts than actual self-sustaining people taking responsibility for what they're buying. Because in the end, that doesn't create as many dollar signs. I don't know if these videos make any kind of sense. I do have points and things that I want to address, and they're just things that I noticed with being a consumer and being someone who does buy things, and realizing just how much outside things contribute to the issues that I am dealing with. And I do want to put this out there because it's something that I feel does not get addressed. It's something that is trivialized. And a lot of aspects and a lot of things that I'm surrounded with, being on YouTube, being a whatever and all that jazz, do cause, there are things that I have to think about. There are things that I need to distance myself from in order for me to have and maintain a healthy life. And there are things that I think that other people struggle about, and I want to put this out and be like, okay, it's a thing, you're not alone, and if you need someone to talk to, I'm here. And I think this whole scenario of addict enabling consumerism and having a shopping addiction is something that needs to get more screen time, more discussion, more reality based. Don't just be all like, oh, well, this person has a shopping addiction. It's something that needs to be talked about, and it's something that needs to be talked about and addressed before it reaches the point. I was watching one documentary about a lady who was recovering from it, and she was 180,000 pounds in debt. I mean, hearing that just made my stomach drop. And I thought to myself, and I told my mom, I thought to myself, I don't want to be that. I don't want to get there. I am in debt. I have debt. I am working. We have a plan and whatever. Like I said, y'all don't need to worry about me in that situation. But looking at my behavior and everything like that, and just seeing how it can get, is frightening and scary, because it is a reality that is like I said, it is encouraged by the current society and economy that we live in. And if any of y'all have this problem or anything like this, I highly recommend reaching out to, Addicts Anonymous sites and things like that. They're even shopping addict things and stuff like that. Helplines, I will leave stuff down below. Highly recommend reaching out, because if you just sit there and think, I can do it myself, I can sit here and I can make minimum payments on my credit cards and keep spending things, it's not going to get better, and it's just going to get worse, and you're going to find yourself in a deep, dark black hole, depressed, surrounded by things with no value for yourself. Obviously, I would love to hear y'all's thoughts about this. I'm doing these videos to hopefully open up a discussion about this subject, because it's not talked about. It is trivialized. It's something that is very real, and something that is sort of, you catch it when it's too late, when you are 180,000 pounds. Dollars. I watch ones that are American and that are British. I'm not, when it comes to shopping addiction, it's everybody deals with it, no matter where you're from, but we don't want it to get to that point. So like I said, I would love to hear what y'all have to say. Thank you guys so much for your love and support and your willingness to listen to me and go through and rant and discuss all sorts of things. I really do love you guys. You are one of the best group of subscribers on this platform. Thank you guys so much. I love you, and as always, keep it real. Mwah.